Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, all over this land. I think I feel a song coming on here. Well, I have not got a hammer, but I've got a bell. That's me. I've got a song to sing all over this land. I'll sing out danger. I'll ring out warning. I'll ring out love between brothers and sisters all over this island. About the wreck you're just about to see. The remains of the steamship the Richard Montgomery, affectionately known by the locals as the Monty. My name is Tim Bell, and David Wilkie has given me the liberty to tell you about the Monty Python story of this wreck. The incompetence, the danger, the speculation, the rumour and the humour, the intriguing, fascinating, historic story. However, I must say, before I start, how it always makes me a nervous wreck to tell you about this story. The Monty was one of 2,710 Liberty ships built between 1939 and 1945 for World War II in 18 shipyards with 20 American engine builders. The Monty was built by the St John Rivers Shipbuilding Company in its second year of operation and was the seventh of the 82 such ships built by that yard. She was launched on 15th of June 1943 and completed on 29th of July. Given the official ship's number 243756 and named after General Richard Montgomery, an Irish sailor who was killed during the American Revolution. An American soldier in the American Revolution. The Americans were brilliant at mass producing very quickly this design of a cargo carrying ship, based on a British design. These very large vessels, 422 feet long, were built in a modular form and then welded together, an all-welded construction. Many welders being women, as many of the men were fighting for the war effort. These shipyards hold the record for the fastest construction in just a few days, and for the most ships built based on this single design. Designed by British shipbuilder J. L. Thompson's of Sunderland, together with Harry Hunter of North East Marine, for the engine, a steam engine designed from the Newcastle shipyards. It was a triple expansion steam engine with the steam produced from two oil-fired boilers, 2,500 horsepower, driving the ships at 11 knots. It also had 3 steam-driven electrical generators. One was dedicated for supplying the current around the hull to degauss the magnetic effect, to help prevent magnetic mines from detonating. At one time, you could see the torpedo nets hanging from the derricks of this wreck, but now have long gone. Roosevelt said that they would build these ships faster than the Germans could sink them, which was true. These incredible large cargo-carrying ships carried vital supplies for the war effort across the Atlantic and further, and we owe much dedication and respect for the many merchant navy men and women and civilians who lost their lives in what was one of the most dangerous jobs. More lives were lost than from most of those in the Royal Navy. Such was the dangers on these Liberty ships. The ship's crew of 45 or more used to joke if the Monty was to be hit, they would not need life jackets, but need parachutes. Fortunately, no casualties were lost on the stranding and sinking of this wreck, although some did jump overboard, including the third cook, for other reasons, it seems. The Monty entered the Thames estuary in 1944 in a convoy with 7 other Liberty ships and was allocated a mooring in the Great Nore anchorage on the south-end side of Sheerness, Middlesands, a shallow water area extending from the Isle of Grain, a spit of shallow water caused by the separation of the tides between the Thames and the Medway. The estuary was full of ships, a sight to behold: minesweepers, guard boats, boom defence vessels, barrage balloon boats and inspection vessels, together with battleships, frigates and Liberty ships. A real nightmare of a parking problem. A row broke out on where to moor the Monty between Her Majesty's Harbour Master and the Assistant, stationed at HMS Lee on the end of Southend Pier. And the Assistant wanted it in writing, but was reprimanded by a senior officer. How dare he question His Majesty's Harbour Master? The Assistant simply suggested, due to the draft of the Monty, that it should interchange places with another ship. The normal draft of Liberty ships were 28 feet, but due to the amount and the weight of ordnance, or bombs to you and I, it had a draft of 31 feet, which would make all the difference to the subsequent outcome. As predicted by the Assistant, the wind changed and blew from the north. At slack tide, the vessel swung around to face north. The stern crossed the sandbank where it lies today. The ship broke its back and is in 2 sections, or now possibly 3. Half the cargo of bombs was slowly removed by the stevedores, on danger money of course, and overtime. They milked the situation by carefully taking their time, until a storm arose, and then everything was put down to the weather, whether or not they would stay and face the danger, or whether they would go to the pub. An easy decision, of course, was made to retreat as fast as they could, but left the hatches open in their haste, and left the hull to fill with water. Half the cargo of the original 7,000 tons was left in the hull. That's a bit of a worry for Sheerness just over there. With a net explosive quantity of 1,400 tons of TNT. That's if you were to extract the fillings from the bomb cases. But I would not recommend you try this, because if you do, you might just lose some teeth and some fillings in the process, and a lot more. But please don't worry or have nightmares. TNT can be very stable. They used to heat it up to form a liquid to pour into the bomb cases. It would take a very powerful detonator to set one off. But there again, there are thousands of bombs of different sizes in the hull, the largest of which is a 1-ton bomb. That's 2,000 pounds. 189 of these in the main hold of number 2, and thousands of half-ton or 1,000 pound bombs. Of course, these bombs are not normally fitted with their fuses or detonators for transportation for obvious reasons. Phew, that's a relief. However, the most dangerous in this ship being the cluster bombs, packed in metal-lined wooden box cases on the between deck above hold number 2. 200 tons of weight on this deck waiting to fall when it corrodes and collapses onto the cargo in the main hold below, where the fuses and detonators have been fitted from the factory in these 2,297 Pandora's boxes. The thought is enough to make you oneself. But don't worry, the fuses are thought now to have corroded away to kingdom come. This ship contains hundreds of semi-armour piercing bombs, fragmentation bombs, cluster bombs, general-purpose bombs, smoke bombs, and much more, made especially to supply the US and the Royal Air Force for World War II. Though please don't fret. The front of the ship, where most of the bombs are stored, are in holds 1, 2 and 3, and are facing northwards towards the delight of Southend-on-Sea. On the Court of Inquiry into the stranding of the ship, which was held on the ship, the court did not hear, unfortunately, from the assistant harbour master, because he had been conveniently posted off elsewhere before the inquiry. The inquiry asked where was the captain at the time of the grounding, and the first mate, who was in charge, replied he was asleep in his bunk. But of course the locals know better. The captain had gone ashore to get charts of the area and was enjoying a pint or two in the Royal Fountain or the Jolly Sailor, but could not get back because of the storm. Poor Captain Wilkie. Now, where have I heard that name before? Or perhaps given the nickname by the crew as Willie Leakey. He took the rap. The poor US captain and the first mate were held responsible for the incident, instead of the harbour master. However, the ship's chief officer was unable to explain why he had not alerted the captain. Well, we know the reasons for that. The further Board of Inquiry eventually concluded that the anchorage the harbour master had assigned had placed the ship in jeopardy, and returned the captain of Richard Montgomery to the full duty a week after. Out of the 2,710 Liberty ships built, there are only 4 left, and only 2 sea-going, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien and the John Brown. Both are floating tributes and museums to these wonderful ships. I managed to see the inside of the Jeremiah O'Brien, the sister of the Monty, in Gillingham, Chatham Docks in 1994, and saw her as she blew her ship's hooter as she went past the wreck as a respect for her sister. I later saw her again alongside Pier 45 in San Francisco, her home port. Now the question is the fate of the Monty in the hands of God? An amusing letter sent to the Sheerness Congregational Church in Hope Street, Sheerness, in 1971 tells this story. Miss Witt from the church wanted to know what the authorities were going to do about it. The many replies from the authorities apparently were not good enough for Miss Witt, from a civil servant called Mr. Goodenough. The final letter by a colleague said that they could not add anything further from the previous letters by Mr. Goodenough, and said if the wreck was to blow up, that in itself would be an act of God, and they thought that the churchmen of Sheerness would be in a better position to judge that than they were. So it seems today, because the wreck is in a few fathoms of water, the authorities cannot fathom out what to do with it. I leave you with the final thought. What can be done today should not be left until tomorrow. Love to you all my brothers and sisters, from Peter, Paul, Mary and me. I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the